Sebastian Steele slammed the door of his matte black Aston Martin and muttered a curse under his breath as he stared at the empty fuel gauge. "Unbelievable," he growled, tugging at the sleeves of his tailored navy suit. The wind whipped down the deserted country road, kicking up dust and leaves, and the only sound was the low hum of insects and the distant rustle of trees. No cell service, no gas station in sight, no assistant to fix it, just him, stranded in the middle of nowhere, and he hated it. Sebastian wasn't used to problems like this. The billionaire tech mogul who could buy out half of Silicon Valley wasn't supposed to be pacing beside a stalled car on a back road in Tennessee, 20 miles from the airport, wearing Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people's rent. He was late for a meeting in Nashville. His private jet had touched down early that morning, and wanting a break from the chaos, he decided to drive himself through the countryside. A mistake, clearly. He kicked at her rock and cursed again. Perfect. Then he heard it gravel crunching under tires. A rusted blue pickup truck rolled over the hill, slowing as it neared him. The driver's window rolled down, and Sebastian caught sight of a woman behind the wheel, her chestnut hair in a messy braid, sunglasses perched on her nose, a smudge of paint on her cheek. "You all right?" she called out, her voice light but cautious. He stepped forward, brushing a hand through his hair. "Ran out of gas." The woman tilted her head, giving him a once-over. "In that thing, fancy car, bad planning." He let out a dry laugh. "Story of my life," she snorted. "You want a ride to town, or are you planning on waiting for a miracle?" Sebastian hesitated. She looked young, maybe late 20s, wearing a paint-stained T-shirt and jeans, and her truck had seen better days. But she didn't look afraid. She looked amused. Like she found the whole situation entertaining. "I'd appreciate the ride," he said finally. She leaned over and popped the passenger door open. "Hop in, I'm Olivia Price." "Sebastian." He climbed in, catching the scent of vanilla and something floral, maybe lavender. "Thanks," she gave him a quick glance as they drove off. "No last name, you one of those mysterious types," he smirked. "Something like that." The truck rattled as they bumped along the road. Olivia hummed along to the radio, tapping the steering wheel with chipped blue fingernails. She was nothing like the women Sebastian usually met. No designer clothes, no perfectly curated Instagram smiles. She was real, and it was oddly refreshing. "So," she said, glancing at him again, "what's a guy in that suit doing out here with no gas?" "Trying to get away from everything," he said. She raised a brow. "Everything meaning what?" He paused. "Work, people, pressure, noise." Olivia nodded slowly, eyes back on the road. "Can't run forever," he looked at her. "You sound like you've tried." "Maybe," she said lightly. "Or maybe I just live here and know what kind of people end up on this road." By the time they pulled into the small town of Maplewood, Sebastian felt like he'd been transported to another world. The main street had one diner, a gas station, a hardware store, and an art gallery with a hand-painted sign. "Here you go," Olivia said, parking in front of the gas station. "You can grab a can here and hike back to your spaceship." He stared at the gallery across the street. "That yours?" She followed his gaze. "Yeah, I run it. Paint everything in there, too." He looked at her again, this time really seeing her, the paint on her face, the confidence in her voice, the way her eyes lit up even talking about her art. "You're talented." "I'm passionate," she said. "Talent's just a bonus," he grinned. "I like that." She raised an eyebrow. "You flirt with every woman who saves you from being stranded, only the ones who make me laugh." Olivia rolled her eyes but smiled. "Go get your gas, city boy." He bought a red fuel can, filled it, and was about to call for a car when he caught sight of Olivia walking into the gallery. Without thinking, he crossed the street. Inside, the space smelled like turpentine and lemon. Sunlight poured through the large windows, casting shadows on the hardwood floors. The walls were filled with canvases, bold strokes of color, abstract landscapes, portraits that pulled emotion out of you whether you wanted it or not. "You painted all these?" he asked. Olivia turned, wiping her hands on a rag. "Yeah, surprising, impressive," she gave a small shrug. "It's what I love." He looked around again, drawn to a painting of a woman standing on a cliff, hair blowing in the wind, staring out at a sky streaked with gold and fire. This one, it feels lonely. She walked beside him. It's about waiting for something that might never come. He looked at her. Has it? Olivia held his gaze. Not yet. He didn't know what it was about her, but something pulled at him. Maybe it was the way she didn't try to impress him. Maybe it was the way she saw right through him. Or maybe it was just that, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he had to pretend. Let me take you to dinner, he said, surprising even himself. She blinked. Dinner? There's a restaurant over there. He nodded toward the old brick building across from the gas station. Let me buy you a meal, least I can do. Olivia hesitated, then smiled. All right. But I'm picking the wine. They walked to the restaurant, and she did pick the wine, a sweet local red he'd never heard of. Over pasta and laughter, something shifted between them. By the time they stepped back outside under the stars, Sebastian wasn't thinking about his meeting in Nashville or his company or the chaos of his life. He was thinking about Olivia and how he wasn't ready to leave this town or her, not yet, not even close. Sebastian stood outside the gallery the next morning, coffee in one hand, the other stuffed in his coat pocket as he stared at the closed sign swinging gently in the breeze. The night had kept him restless. He checked into the only inn in town, a charming old place with creaky floors and floral wallpaper, but even the quiet couldn't settle him. Olivia's laugh had followed him into sleep, and the vivid colors of her paintings had filled his dreams. He wasn't sure what had drawn him back this early, but something about the woman who'd saved him from the side of the road tugged at him with a force he couldn't explain. He'd planned to head back to Nashville at sunrise. Instead, he found himself waiting on a sidewalk in a town he couldn't have located on a map 2 days ago. The bell above the gallery door jingled as it opened. Olivia stepped out, balancing a cardboard tray with 2 steaming cups and a paper bag. A paint-stained apron was tied loosely around her waist, and her hair was twisted up in a loose knot. She stopped short when she saw him. "You really don't give up, do you?" she said, holding the tray out. "I have extra muffins." He took one of the cups. "You always feed strangers. You're not a stranger anymore," she said, her voice casual. "You're just that guy who stranded himself in style." He laughed for the first time that morning. "I was hoping you'd show me more of your work." She tilted her head, considering him. "You're not just here for the art. I'm not denying that." She handed him the bag. "Blueberry or lemon poppy seed? Whichever you don't want." They sat on the edge of the gallery steps, sipping coffee and watching a group of kids ride their bikes through the square. The air felt warmer today, the sun peeking through a line of pines that edged the town like a secret boundary. "You grew up here?" he asked. Olivia nodded. "Left for a few years, came back after my dad passed. He built this place." "The gallery?" "No," she said, brushing a crumb from her lap. "The town, or at least most of it. He was a contractor. Everyone here knew him. He used to walk me to every job site and tell me which beams he was proud of." Sebastian leaned back against the wooden railing. "Sounds like he was someone worth knowing." "He was," she said softly. "And when he died, I didn't want this place to vanish with him." He studied her profile, the way she spoke without theatrics. No self-pity, no embellishments, just truth. He couldn't recall the last time someone had told him anything that felt so unvarnished. "I don't think you realize how rare that is," he said. She looked over. "What?" "Loving something enough to fight for it, even when no one else sees the value." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That's an odd thing to say for someone who probably lives in a glass tower." "I don't live in a tower," he said, "but I do spend a lot of time looking down on things." She didn't laugh, and he was glad she didn't. Instead, she asked, "Why were you really driving out here?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I needed to be somewhere no one expected me to be." "Did it help?" "I haven't thought about my office in 16 hours, he said. "That's a record." She stood, brushing her hands on her apron. "You want to help me hang a new canvas? It's too big for me to lift off the floor." He followed her inside, past shelves cluttered with brushes and open tubes of paint, to a back room that smelled faintly of sawdust and linseed oil. A large, unfinished painting leaned against the wall. It was a night scene deep blues and blacks, with a single golden window lit in the middle of a dark forest cabin. Sebastian bent down and took one end. "What's it called?" "I haven't named it yet." He carried it to the display wall with her. The moment they stepped back, he saw it, the loneliness again, but this time touched with hope. "You paint what you feel," he said. "I paint what I don't know how to say." He turned to her, something tightening in his chest. "You ever think about leaving again?" "Sometimes," she said. "But I can't decide if that's because I want more or because I'm scared I'll lose what I have." He nodded slowly. "That's something I understand more than I want to." She met his gaze, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then the gallery door creaked open and a woman with salt and pepper curls stepped in, waving at Olivia. "Mornin', Liv. I brought that frame you asked for." Olivia smiled, breaking the moment. "Thanks, Mrs. Heller, back here." Sebastian took the opportunity to step outside. He needed air. Needed to keep himself from saying something that would push too far, too fast. He walked aimlessly down the street, past the diner, the barber shop, and the church with its white steeple. Every person he passed nodded, smiled, or waved. The simplicity of it all shouldn't have unsettled him, but it did, because it made him question everything he'd built. At the corner, he stopped beside an old bench and sat. A boy ran past chasing a dog, and somewhere a bell rang, marking the hour. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw notifications piling up, emails, missed calls, a meeting rescheduled in New York. He turned it off. Later that afternoon, Olivia found him back at the gallery, staring at a different painting, a street scene filled with shadows and light, two figures passing each other without ever turning their heads. "I didn't mean to make you disappear," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I needed to think." Dangerous habit, he glanced at her. "You ever wonder what would happen if you just walked away from here? From everything?" She crossed her arms. "I think about it, but I also think about what I'd regret." He stepped closer. "What if you found something worth chasing instead?" She watched him, eyes unreadable. "That would depend on whether it was real or just passing through." He didn't answer. He couldn't, not yet. But as he stood there, surrounded by her colors, her world, he knew one thing with painful clarity. He wasn't passing through, not anymore. The storm came without warning. By the time Sebastian stepped out of the gallery that evening, dark clouds had gathered above Maplewood like a curtain drawing across the sky. Thunder rumbled low in the distance, and the scent of rain clung to the air, heavy, electric. He crossed the street quickly, heading toward the inn, but stopped when he saw Olivia climbing a ladder outside the hardware store, wrestling with a wind-tossed banner advertising an upcoming art fair. She was gripping the top rung with one hand, the other tangled in string and canvas. "You planning on flying away with that thing?" he called, striding over. Her braid whipped around as she looked down. "This was supposed to be a 5-minute job." He held the ladder steady. "And now it's a scene from a disaster movie? I can't leave it. If it rips, it'll take the gutter with it." "Let go," he said, voice firm. "I've got this." She hesitated, then descended carefully, letting him climb up. The wind howled louder as he secured the banner with firm knots, rain starting to spit across his shoulders. When he dropped back down, she was watching him with narrowed eyes. "You tie knots like someone who's done it before." 2 years of sailing lessons when I was a teenager," he said. "My father thought it would build character." "Did it?" "No," he replied easily. "But it got me out of the house." They ducked into the hardware store's covered awning as the downpour began in earnest. Rain lashed the pavement, turning the square into a blur of motion and sound. "You could have let it fall," she said, shaking water from her sleeves. "You could have waited for someone else to fix it." She glanced sideways at him. "You always this stubborn?" "I call it inconveniently persistent." Olivia smiled faintly, but her gaze lingered on the street, where the storm had washed the color from everything. Something shifted in her demeanor, not sadness exactly, but something quieter. I didn't tell you, she said after a moment. I almost sold the gallery last year. He turned fully toward her. Why didn't you? I was halfway through signing the paperwork when I realized I couldn't do it. The buyer wanted to turn it into a boutique, strip it down. Make it minimalist. Would have been a shame, he said. I needed the money, but I needed the history more. Sebastian nodded, something tightening in his chest. You held onto your foundation. You ever let go of yours? She asked. The question caught him off guard. Not because it was invasive, but because it cut straight to the place he'd been avoiding. My father ran everything like a battlefield, he said finally. I spent my whole life trying to move faster than him, build bigger, win louder. By the time I did, I realized I didn't know what to do with peace. And now I'm standing in a storm outside a hardware store in a town I didn't know existed 5 days ago, he said. And it's the first time I've felt like I can breathe in months. She looked at him then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them, raw, honest, and unguarded. Before either of them could say more, a truck pulled up beside the curb. A tall man with a baseball cap leaned out the window. Liv, you still coming to the auction tonight? She nodded. Wouldn't miss it. He drove off with a wave, splashing a puddle in his wake. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Auction? Local fundraiser, she said. Silent bids, homemade pies, and a lot of competitive grandmas. Sounds like a war zone. You should come, Olivia said, brushing damp curls from her forehead. You might win something. He didn't hesitate. Only if you're there. That night, the community center buzzed with energy. Folding tables were covered with quilts, baked goods, and donated antiques. Children darted between adults. A string quartet played near the stage, slightly off-key but charming in their enthusiasm. Olivia navigated the crowd with practiced ease, greeting neighbors, exchanging hugs, laughing at inside jokes. Sebastian followed her, struck by how seamlessly she belonged here, how each person lit up when she approached. Sebastian, this is Martha, Olivia said, introducing him to a woman with silver hair and a sharp gaze. She makes the best blackberry cobbler in Tennessee. I'll be the judge of that, he said, accepting a plate. Martha sniffed. City boy, huh? Guilty? Well, she said, pointing a fork at him, don't you go breaking her heart. He choked slightly on the bite. Olivia rolled her eyes. Martha, please. I'm too old to mince words, the woman replied, turning on her heel. Sebastian leaned in. Does she run the town? She runs the gossip, Olivia replied. Which is worse? They wandered past the auction tables. He paused in front of a framed sketch charcoal on paper, raw and expressive. It was Olivia's signature beneath the corner. Did you draw this? I forgot I donated that one, she said. It's not my usual style. He didn't speak. Instead, he picked up a pen and wrote down a number. Her eyes widened. That's 3 times the highest bid. I don't lose auctions. You're ridiculous. You're talented. They stood there, close enough to feel the heat between them, the hum of something growing. But before either moved, the lights flickered overhead and the auctioneer called out for final bids. Later, when the night wound down and the crowd thinned, Olivia walked him to the door. You fit in here more than you think, she said quietly. He stepped closer. I don't want to just fit in. I want to understand why it matters. She tilted her head. Why does it? Because I'm starting to wonder what I've missed by never stopping long enough to notice people like you. She held his gaze, her breath catching just slightly. People like me, people who build something because they believe in it. Who stay even when it's easier to walk away. The silence between them pulsed, thick with the weight of what was unsaid. Then, just as she opened her mouth to respond, a child ran past, crashing into Olivia's legs and laughing. The spell broke, but the tension didn't leave. It sat between them like a promise waiting to be claimed. Sebastian reached out, brushing a raindrop from her jaw. I'm not leaving tomorrow, he said. Her voice was a whisper. I didn't ask you to stay. You didn't have to. Sebastian stood at the edge of the town square just past sunset, watching as paper lanterns drifted into the velvet sky. The community had gathered again, this time for the annual Founders' Night. a tradition Olivia had mentioned only once in passing. He hadn't planned to stay long enough to see it. Now he couldn't imagine leaving before it ended. Children darted between picnic tables, catching fireflies in glass jars. A local band played beneath a gazebo wrapped in twinkling lights. The smell of grilled corn and baked cinnamon filled the air, and laughter carried on the breeze. He spotted Olivia near the bonfire, her face lit gold by the flames. She was speaking to an older couple, her posture relaxed but animated. She hadn't seen him yet, and he didn't approach immediately. Instead, he watched her move through the crowd like someone who belonged entirely to this place, to these people, to a rhythm he was still learning. He didn't belong here. But he wanted to. When she finally caught his eye, she gave a small, surprised smile and excused herself from the conversation. "I didn't think you'd come," she said as she reached him, brushing a strand of hair away from her cheek. "I wasn't sure I'd be welcome. You've been here 6 days. You've eaten at every diner table, helped 3 people fix things, and bid on half the auction," she said. "You're more welcome than most," he looked around. "You've built something rare here." She folded her arms, her expression soft. "It's not perfect. But it's mine. I understand that more than I ever thought I would." They walked slowly along the edge of the square, weaving between families and neighbors. The voices faded slightly as they reached the far side, near the old library steps. "I used to think stillness meant failure," Sebastian said. "That if I wasn't chasing something, I was losing." "What changed?" she asked. "You." She didn't respond right away. Her gaze lingered on the lanterns drifting higher, their flames flickering like stars that refused to go out. "I've been offered a lot of things over the years," she said finally. "Grants, gallery space in bigger cities. A chance to start over somewhere else. Why didn't you take them?" "Because I didn't want to build something new if it meant forgetting where I started." He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers without hesitation. "I don't want to forget anything. I want to know everything." She studied him, her eyes searching his. "You say that now, but once you go back, I'm not going back," her breath caught. "I called my team this morning," he continued. "Told them I'm stepping away for a while. I've been running on autopilot for too long." "And for what? More meetings. Another 0 at the end of a number that already doesn't mean anything. You're serious." "I'm here, Olivia, not just for tonight. I want to invest in something real. Something that doesn't vanish when the market shifts." "You don't even know what that looks like," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to learn. I want you to show me." She pulled her hand back, not out of rejection, but because she was overwhelmed. He could see it. Her walls weren't up, they were cracking. And underneath them, he saw the same thing he'd felt every day since she'd driven up in that truck: hope. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he said. She looked at him, raw and open. "What if this is just a moment?" "It's not." He stepped closer. "Because I've had all the moments I thought I wanted, and none of them felt like this." From behind them, someone called Olivia's name. She turned, waved, then looked back at Sebastian with something new in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. "I don't want a perfect life," she said. "I just want one I can wake up in and choose every day." "Then choose this," he said. "Choose me." She didn't answer with words. Instead, she stepped forward and kissed him, not tentative, not shy. It was a kiss that pulled the air from his lungs and grounded him in place, like roots finally breaking through stone. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I want you to stay," she whispered. "But on one condition." "Anything? You don't try to fix what isn't broken." "I wouldn't dare." Later that night, under the soft glow of lanterns and stars, Sebastian stood beside Olivia in the center of the square as the final song played. People danced around them, swaying slowly to the music, but he only saw her. "Do you think they'll ever get used to me?" he asked. "Probably not," she said, smiling, "but they'll love you anyway." He slipped a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and held it between them. "I know we haven't done this the usual way," he said, "but nothing about you feels ordinary, so I won't wait for the right time. I'll just make this one the right time." Her eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a delicate ring silver, set with a single sapphire that caught the light like a drop of sky. "Olivia Price," he said, voice steady despite the thunder in his chest, "will you build something with me?" She stared at the ring, then at him, one hand pressed over her heart. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will." Cheers erupted around them, neighbors, friends, strangers turned family. Someone whistled. A child tossed confetti into the air. But Sebastian only saw her, and when she slipped the ring on her finger and kissed him again, he knew. He hadn't just run out of gas on a country road, he'd run straight into everything he'd been missing. Forever started right there, in the town he never meant to find with the woman who made him want to stay. A gentle breeze swept through the open windows of the renovated gallery, carrying the scent of fresh paint and wild jasmine. Olivia stood near the back wall, barefoot and wearing a linen dress streaked with color. Her hair was pinned up haphazardly, strands curling around her cheeks as she studied the large canvas now mounted in the center of the room. It was the final piece for the exhibit, her first full collection since reopening the gallery under a new name, Steele and Price. The new sign out front gleamed beneath the spring sun, just installed the day before. The moment she'd seen it, her heart had thudded not from nerves but from the profound sense of rightness. The gallery wasn't just hers anymore, it was theirs. "You're doing that thing again," Sebastian said from the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Where you stare at the painting like it's going to change if you just scowl hard enough." "I'm assessing the balance," she said, reaching for the mug he handed her. "The light in the right corner still feels too heavy. You said that yesterday. And the day before that. And I'll keep saying it until it stops being true." Sebastian leaned against the wall, dressed in jeans and a dark gray shirt rolled up to his elbows. His beard had grown in slightly, neatly trimmed, a softer look than he used to allow. The city had smoothed his sharp edges, but small-town life had reshaped him entirely. "You've been more stressed about this opening than you were about our wedding," he said. "That's because the wedding had cake and dancing. And you in a tux. You're avoiding compliments again." "I'm not avoiding them, I'm just prioritizing realism." "I'll give you realism," he said, stepping closer. "You've built something people will never forget." She looked up at him, letting the truth of that settle. "I still can't believe you stayed." "I didn't stay," he said quietly. "I chose, there's a difference." Before she could answer, a knock at the front door pulled their attention. Olivia crossed the room and opened it to reveal Clara, one of the local high school students who'd been interning at the gallery. "I finished the flyers," Clara said, holding up a stack. "And Mrs. Henley said she'll bring the lemon bars after all." "Thank you." Olivia grinned, taking them. "Tell her I'll save her a front row seat." Clara beamed and skipped away. Olivia shut the door gently, then turned back to Sebastian. "Every part of this still feels like a dream," she said. "That's because it's yours now, all of it. No compromises." He walked to the windows and opened them wider, letting the breeze swirl through the gallery. Outside, the town square was bustling. Vendors were setting up booths, musicians tuning instruments, and children chasing bubbles through the air. The spring festival had become the perfect excuse to host the gallery's grand reopening, and nearly the entire town had committed to showing up. Sebastian turned to her, a rare seriousness softening his voice. "There's something I want to give you before tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "Besides your unshakable confidence in my brushstrokes." He walked to the front desk and opened the drawer, pulling out a small, flat box wrapped in deep green paper. He handed it to her without a word. She opened it slowly, her fingers brushing the velvet interior, and gasped. Inside was a key. But not to the gallery. This one was shaped like a house key, engraved with 3 small stars and the initials S and O on the bow. "I bought it," he said. "The old McAllister place. Needs work, but it's close to the creek and the backyard catches the late light just right." Her eyes lifted to his, wide and wet with disbelief. "You bought a house. I want to build something permanent with you, not just the gallery, a life, a home. Somewhere we can wake up, drink terrible coffee, and argue about brushstrokes for the rest of our lives. She stepped forward, resting her hand on his chest. What if I try to paint the walls orange? I'll repaint them every week if it means I get to live there with you. She laughed, and the sound broke through the last of her nerves. I love you. I've loved you since the moment you called my car a spaceship. They kissed, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything except forever. Later that evening, the gallery was alight with music and conversation. String lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the crowd. People wandered through the exhibit, pausing before each canvas with quiet reverence. Olivia stood near the entrance, greeting guests, accepting compliments, and watching as her work connected with people in a way she'd only ever dreamed about. Sebastian mingled easily now, chatting with locals, offering drinks, laughing freely. He no longer looked like the man who'd stepped out of an expensive car in a tailored suit. He looked like he belonged. Toward the end of the night, Olivia stepped onto the small platform they'd turned into a makeshift stage. The room quieted instantly. I just wanted to say thank you, she began, her voice strong despite the emotion behind it. This gallery has always been more than a space for me. It's been a memory, a fight, and now a promise. A promise that art and community and love aren't separate things. She looked at Sebastian, who stood just off stage, his eyes locked on hers. They're all the same thing, she said. And I wouldn't have found that without the most unexpected detour of my life. The crowd erupted in applause, and Sebastian stepped up beside her, his hand slipping into hers as they took in the moment together. As the night wound down and the final guests trickled out, they sat on the gallery floor surrounded by empty glasses and fading laughter. You know, Sebastian said, leaning back on his elbows, I never asked you what you were painting the day we met. She reached over and took his hand. It was a woman standing still while the sky moved around her. That sounds familiar. She didn't know what she was waiting for. And now, Olivia looked at him, her heart full. Now she's not waiting anymore. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains of their new home. The scent of fresh coffee drifted down the hallway, and the soft creak of floorboards echoed beneath Sebastian's bare feet as he walked into the kitchen, 2 mugs in hand. Olivia stood at the window, sketchbook open, the early light spilling across the page. She turned, smiled, and took one of the mugs. No words were needed. Outside, the world moved forward. But in that little house on the edge of a town neither of them had meant to fall in love with, everything stood still, exactly the way they wanted it. Forever.